Welcome to the Career Slay podcast, the show where we interview people who love their jobs and discuss career growth, fearless leadership, and creating a life you love. I'm your host, Kelly Poquiz Burke, a marketer turned executive coach, and I'm here to help you lead with courage and slay the fear in career. If you're a fan of these conversations and want to dive deeper into your own career and leadership questions, book a coaching discovery call with me at careerslay.com. Milam Miller is a leadership expert, keynote speaker, and executive coach with a 15-year career in sports, media, and tech. He once led global sales for Italian football club AS Roma, where he and his team secured a record-breaking sponsorship with Qatar Airways. But beyond the boardroom, Milam has discovered a deeper passion: human connection. That passion inspired him to launch Be Confident and Kind, a leadership consultancy focused on building high-performing, psychologically safe workplace cultures. He's spoken at Amazon, led workshops at Google, and is publishing his first leadership book, The Charisma Craft. Outside of work, Milam loves staying active, traveling, and spending time with his wife and son. Wow, what a joy it was to sit down with Milam. From navigating New York City in a suit that definitely didn't match the vibe, to leading global sponsorships and now launching his own business and book, his story is a reminder that your career doesn't have to follow a straight line to be successful. What resonated most was his commitment to authenticity and his belief that charisma is a craft, not something you're born with, but something you can build through confidence, kindness, and curiosity. Honestly, I left this conversation feeling inspired to lean into who I am and maybe up my Riz game too.
I'm super excited to have you on the podcast, Milam. Thank you for joining us on Career Slay.
Me too. I'm so happy to be here.
We met at a speaker training, and it was so serendipitous.
That's right. Two Texans meeting in New Jersey.
What I think was fascinating about just meeting you at the heroic training is that we just have so many common interests. I feel like our career paths have followed a similar trajectory, but I want to start at the beginning with you. So take us to your childhood. What were you like as a kid?
So as a kid, I had an older sister who was very performative. She was very theatrical. So I was often her stunt man, her double. She's 3 years older, my sister. I was very, I would like to think, agreeable as a kid. Whatever she said went. And as I matured and found my own group of friends, I had a lot of interests. Those interests changed over the years, but sports was always a through line that I enjoyed both as a spectator, as a fan, and also as an athlete, as playing them. I did a ton of things in high school. I like to call myself a popular nerd, meaning that I did speech and debate. Like, it was very nerdy, but people were still like, you do your thing, Milam, like, good for you. Go stand up there. So my love for speaking has been around. Probably I would trace back till when I was 15.
You were like the Zac Efron in High School Musical.
See, I don't know that reference, Kelly, but my wife would get it because I know she watched that show. But yeah, I suppose maybe I was.
You and my husband, both millennials who do not know what High School Musical is. Okay, that blows my mind. Anyways, so did you always have an entrepreneurial spirit?
I would say so, yes. In my family, my dad always worked for small businesses. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad's father, my grandfather, was also he was a small business owner himself and had a second generation business. He was an only child that he inherited from his mother, which was kind of rare for that day and age. My great grandmother was a business owner, and the reason being was because her husband dropped dead of a stroke when he was 45. Yeah, so when we think to the early, 1900s, not a lot of women owned businesses, but when your husband drops dead, you do. And at that time, my grandfather, her only son, was in the military. But ultimately, my grandfather came back home to help his mother run our family-owned business, which was a used car lot. They sold cars.
Wow. So your origin story is used car salesman. So Is that where your charisma comes from?
Well, you picked up on that, and I'm glad you named it for what it is, used car salesman. There's often a negative connotation attached with that, that used car salesmen are slimy or sleazy or trying to push something on you don't want. I like to think it's actually the complete opposite. My grandfather was an incredible matchmaker. He knew what his customers' criteria was. And if they said they wanted an SUV, he wasn't trying to sell them a sedan. So I say all that because I would argue my great-grandmother was entrepreneurially spirited to keep the business going. My grandfather, second-generation business owner, my dad wanted to do his own thing, which he did. But there was always this impetus of, if you understand people, you understand business. So whatever you do, as long as you understand people, then you will succeed in business.
Got it. So what did you end up studying in school?
Studied numbers.
Not people.
Not people, but I studied finance or finance for my Texans out there. And it was not what I went into college, Kelly, thinking I would study. I thought I would be a management major, managing people, since leadership had come naturally to me up until that point, just being in various roles and positions in high school and then into college. But it was actually my father, who's a finance guy. Like I said, he worked for other small owned businesses, never his own. That he said, "Mom, it's really important you understand the bottom line and profitability as a viability metric for a business."
Yes. So what did you end up doing after studying finance in college? Did you end up going into that field?
I remember a critical point, Kelly, sitting in I believe it was a Randall's parking lot. Like, I was outside of a grocery store in tears, like fretting, calling my dad to be like, "Yo, Dad, I'm going to fail this capstone finance class." And so I was trying to muster up the courage to be like, how do I tell him this doesn't feel right? This doesn't feel authentic. This doesn't feel aligned. I want to switch majors, but also feeling that tension of like, it's too late. Like, you're already too far down this rabbit hole. I knew I was not going to go work in finance. And I knew I had ambition that was twofold. Number one, I wanted to work in New York City. That older sister I mentioned, she was there. And number two, I knew I wanted to work in sports. Now, what that meant, I didn't know. How I got there was I pulled up Macomb's job board, the business school's job board, and I typed in New York City and sports. Goose egg, like zero results. Okay. So then I went to UT's job board, the entire university, and I typed in New York City sports. I think I got about 30 results, but I started cold calling down the list, 1 to 30. On the 17th call, somebody picked up the phone and said, "Hi, this is Jersey Mike." I thought I accidentally called Jersey Mike subs. Okay. Literally, only to realize it was a gentleman introducing himself as Jersey Mike. He worked at this sports marketing agency. He totally blew me off, which is funny because we're now friends. I persisted. I mentioned I had my older sister living there. I sent her this short list of about 30 companies, and I was like, "Do you recognize any of them?" And she said, "I recognize that one." And I go, "Oh my gosh, that's the one where I was taking notes, where this guy Jersey Mike hung up on me." And she said, hold on. I remember meeting a guy who gave me his business card, and we connected over Texas things. His wife's from Texas. She went to the same summer camp that my sister was a counselor at. And just like that, I was able to get him on the phone, verified that I spoke with his colleague, Jersey Mike. He laughed and was like, "I'm so sorry I hung up on you. If you are coming up to New York anytime, then like, we'd love to interview you." So to me, I was like, if I'm coming up anytime, is that implying like you're not flying me up to interview? I got to get up there on my own dime. So sure enough, that's what I did. I paid for a flight, crashed on my sister's couch, walk into the interview like in my Joseph A. Banks suit, like, "Hey everyone, like I'm so business professional." And when, they opened the door, the scene was everybody in flat billed hats, like black skinny jeans, Vans. Like, it was kind of that era of like skinny jeans, not the baggy era we're in now. And I looked like I stuck out like a sore thumb. They're like, "What are you wearing? Like, what is this boxy suit?" So I left there thinking there's no way they're going to hire me. Like, I do not fit in whatever that culture is, cool, chill, laid back. Like, I'm none of those things. Like, I'm a nerdy speech and debate kid in this boxy Joseph A. Banks suit. And about an hour later, I got an email that said, like, "If you'd love to come work for us, we'd love to have you."
And those experiences took you to some incredible international experiences. So tell us about kind of the trajectory with that marketing career.
Before all the sexy things happened, there were a lot of unsexy things, right? So I just want to be real with listeners out there that it looks flashy on a resume or case study. And let's be clear, it is. Like, going to marquee events is awesome. But there is a lot of brunt work or grunt work that goes into getting to those points. So when I first came into the agency, I was working predominantly in the beer space. So think Bud Light activating at MLB games, traveling around to MLB ballparks across the US. I then moved our luxury vertical within our portfolio of clients, and I started activating predominantly for Omega, which some people know as Omega. And it's a really interesting case study for any fellow marketers out there, which was at that point in time, Omega was known as a timekeeping company. The reason being, they are the official timekeeper of the Olympics every 4 years, and consumers had started associating Michael Phelps hitting the touchpad in the pool, the Omega touchpad, with them being a Swiss precision timekeeping brand. They wanted to change that perception and be synonymous with luxury, which their competitors such as Rolex were. So they decided to sponsor the PGA. As a result, I began traveling to all the PGA of America events for those who know the golf space. So PGA Championship is their marquee, one of the 4 golf majors. And we had an activation to their production budget in excess of 6 figures, million plus. And we would bring in other brand ambassadors such as Michael Phelps, even the ones in Hollywood. They had George Clooney, Nicole Kidman. So we try to get them to these events to build a brand association with them being the first watch on the moon, the watch of James Bond. And I thought that was the coolest thing. I was like, I cannot believe I'm getting to know a brand that I didn't know had done all of those things, but also getting to know the ambassadors associated with it and helping consumers really grow affinity for the uniqueness of a luxury brand that is good at authentic storytelling.
Yeah, and you and I have that in common, where we both worked on brands that invested a lot in sponsorships, activations, celebrity even, and it can feel like this dream job and almost like unreal. Like, how did we get here? What happened next?
That's a great question. What happened? So from that pinch me moment, eventually a lot of the shine will wear off, meaning like it's still work, Kelly. I like to be real with people, right? Certain clients that I served, particularly in the luxury space, were fearful of coloring outside the lines. It became very much rinse and repeat. And you know what? The old saying, if the clock's not broken, don't fix it. I get that. However, there is something to be said for raising the bar and enhancing or improving. And I realized that I had learned a lot, was deeply grateful for those learnings. But for me, I'd felt I kind of capped out and I wanted to learn some new skills. So the shift I was looking to make was moving away from that activation side of the business of sports, as you mentioned, and do something more relational, which is what I knew back in college, right? I don't want to just be crunching finance numbers, but I really want to be dealing with people. So I knew I wanted to be in a sales role, and I didn't know how that would manifest. But ultimately, what ended up taking me global was going to work for a sports team owner who had bought an overseas European football club. And coincidentally, he had a global sales and marketing office in New York City that I started at for a year. We changed personnel during that year. We hired a CMO that was a Spaniard gentleman who had worked at FC Barcelona. And he flew to New York one day and said, I hear you have interest in being closer to the team. We had a mixed use real estate project in Rome, of all places. So what we were pitching the market was a modern day Coliseum that was going to bring live sport and entertainment to the Mediterranean. And he said, how would you feel about coming over to Europe and selling? And I was like, sign me up. Where do I need to sign? So what ended up resulting, even though I was so happy in New York, the epicenter of sports to a lot of people, is I relocated initially to Rome, where the team was based, traveling on the road over 200 days per year. And then ultimately, once we had seen some commercial success, meaning we closed sponsorship deals and brought on blue chip or world-class marquee partners, I was able to get a visa to move to London and open a global commercial sales and marketing office there.
Wow, that is so incredible. You're living your own Lizzie McGuire story. Do you know that reference?
I don't know that one either. I'm sorry.
Oh
I
my
know who she
gosh.
is. I know who Lizzie is, but I don't know her story.
It's okay. It seems like you're just really climbing the career ladder and like seeing all this success. Where do you go from there?
Yeah. At that point in time, my posture was one of which just be open to like where the wind will blow you, where the universe is going to take you. And I think that there's so much power in openness and leaning into an attitude of yes, like, yes, this is going to be hard. And yes, I will figure it out. When I moved to Europe, I experienced loneliness for the first time. And I had a responsibility. I had to find office space. I had to help hire a team. I had to then manage a team. I did have a partner that moved over with me as well. And you're right. I was very much climbing, felt I was on this rocket ship. Really where the rocket kind of started coming back down to earth is when the pandemic hit. And at that point in time, I think a lot of people in the sports world, and maybe those who don't know, who are curious about the sports industry, don't realize how closely tied performance on the pitch, the field, the court, you name the sport, how closely that is tied to commercial success. So if the team's winning, the deals are coming in. It's kind of as simple as that. Or if you have the star player, you draft Caitlin Clark, the stands are going to be full, right? So we had gone really far in the UEFA Champions League. Funny enough, had beaten Leo Messi and the quarterfinals, got knocked out in the semifinals against Liverpool. For all my Liverpool fans out there, what ended up happening, we sold a lot of our top players like Mo Salah, who ended up going to play for Liverpool, Alisson Becker, and the fans turned on our ownership group. So when I was out in the market representing the owners and this grand vision they had, you know, everyone's reading in the press and the papers, it doesn't sound like things are going so well. So you can imagine when the pandemic hit, no fans in the stands. We had not delivered a trophy. There was a lot of negative press out there and lack of momentum. That resulted in ownership making a decision, which was to sell. And as a result, some of us that were employed through the ownership group, we were all made redundant, which is a fancy UK work for you're laid off.
Laid off, yeah.
And for listeners who've never experienced that, receiving that is some of the hardest news anyone can ever hear. Because it oftentimes it's delivered as your role is no longer necessary. Your role has been made redundant. But sometimes the message is delivered as we no longer need you, the person, or you're no longer welcome here.
Yeah, that's tough.
Separating one's identity from what they do is I think so paramount in situations like that are outside of our control.
That must have been a really hard period of time for you, and especially during the pandemic.
I did what a lot of American employees are conditioned to do. I sought legal counsel because I wanted to know what my options were in terms of severance and exit packages. And I think it's really important that listeners protect their livelihoods. A lot of us have families to feed and mortgages to pay and all of that. Thankfully, reached amicable terms to leave my employer. The key sticking point for me was I was still living abroad and my employer had asked me to move abroad. So I went to the change of ownership and said, I don't care who is footing the bill, just please do the right thing and move me home. This isn't my home country. I'm no longer going to have visa sponsorship to work. I expect you all to pay for my expat relocation back home. And they did. They did the right thing. Yeah. So I'm deeply grateful for that. But what did I do once I sought legal counsel and sorted all of that? I was interviewing. I was hitting it, Kelly. This is what us high achievers are conditioned to do. And I found a job 2 weeks later. I remember I started, was told I was made redundant beginning of October, and I started a new job at Halloween.
Oh my goodness. You didn't even really take a break.
No. And in hindsight, I know now, I wish I had. In November and December of 2020, I started going into an office in London and Hammersmith for a new employer where they hired me to come in as a senior leader. And thankfully, even though they were London headquartered, it was a sports media business backed by American private equity. They wanted somebody on the ground in the US and said, we don't care what market you're in. So ultimately, my now wife and I, we relocated to Dallas, had a fruitful 2-year chapter there. But during that time, working fully remote as a senior leader, I realized something about leadership, which leadership is presence. While I do know there are many dynamic and magnetic leaders in hybrid roles, remote leadership can only get you so far. And so I'm a big believer in making sure that an organization's mission is clear, the vision's clear from the top, and that they are values led, so that everybody knows how their personal values plug into the organizational values, and we're moving forward a common objective. And unfortunately, this business was still young and evolving and trying to figure all that out. And I didn't have the patience to stick around. So I proactively stepped away from that to step into my power of serving leaders in a different, bigger, bolder way.
Wow. And so what is this different, bigger, bolder way that you speak of?
Well, thank you for asking. It's funny, Kelly, because when I launched my business, which is now known today as Be Confident and Kind, I initially did not step boldly. I tiptoed. I was like, I'm going to launch a fractional work practice, a consultative practice called BCK Consulting. So my first LLC filing was BCK Consulting. And then as, fate would have it, the first question I got from anyone, any conversation I was having, Kelly, was, what does BCK mean? And that's what made me play bigger. And so I ended up refiling my LLC name, which I highly suggest y'all don't do that, because I had to pay the Secretary of State of Texas $75, and I could go into other key learnings there. But the point is, I realized that who I wanted to serve was leaders like my former self who had been in remote roles, maybe feeling stuck, maybe feeling like they didn't really have agency or autonomy to serve, not giving budget to grow teams, build out teams, advance teams. Anyone who wanted to explore their own leadership ethos and figure out what confidence and kindness meant to them. So the fractional work practice ended up evolving. Instead of just providing consultative work on really what I was doing was any rev generating activity tied to sports or sport adjacent businesses. Whenever I would come in and do that body of work, I was often working with the executive teams, the senior leadership teams, even managers, and they all said, hey, can you coach up this leader or coach up this new manager? And that's ultimately what led me to coaching, which is something that I know you and I share.
Wow, that's incredible. Where does Be Confident and Kind come from?
Be Confident and Kind is something that I created. I'm a big journaler. Like I find journaling to be very cathartic. And I had read an article that a lot of high functioning coaches, which I realized I didn't touch on Ted Lasso. So we're going to circle back there. But real life coaches, not fictional ones like Ted Lasso on TV, such as the example I often use is Pete Carroll, coached at USC for a long time and then went to the Seattle Seahawks and the NFL. His personal philosophy, for example, is compete every day. Or when I worked in the golf space, I knew Greg Norman, regardless of what you think of him, his was attack the day. And so a lot of coaches, like athletes, have nicknames, the shark, the this, and they embody these mindsets like Kobe Bryant's Mamba mentality. And I knew, or for my non-sports people, if you like entertainment, Beyonce, like Sasha Fierce, like it's like turning on or the embodying, something that's authentic to you, right? And in order for you to deliver that experience or get into overdrive, get into a flow state. And I realized for me, where I saw the most success in my corporate career was when I was really confident in the subject matter that it was I was pitching, selling, as well as kind, like to myself, like maybe when I stumble, when I'm practicing, kind to others, like radiating warmth is a posture from which people want to do business with other people. And that's something I saw my grandfather model all the time on his used car lot, like leading from a place of curiosity, genuineness, and warmth. And he was really confident he could find the solution. So I just realized being confident and kind is something that I thought could serve me and also serve the future of work.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's something that's sorely needed in the workplace and for all leaders to embody. So you started coaching leaders. Has your business evolved since then?
Businesses, like people, are constantly evolving. And in my case, I had hired a coach as I was transitioning from the UK back to the US. That coach was really profound for me when I was a senior leader, still W-2'd and employed. And when I decided to leave, I knew I needed to embody a different mindset, the mindset of an entrepreneur, somebody who's creating value and like wants to drive impact in the world. Leading in the workplace, like I am more closely aligned with the ideology of leading as a coach as opposed to like being a boss. I do think there's a huge difference, and a boss may tell you what to do or how to do it their way, whereas a coach will empower you and they're going to guide you to bring your strengths forward. I ended up training through a group called the Coactive Training Institute, CTI, and decided that I wanted to coach across all levels of leadership. But in my case, it's anyone who's actually managing people. So that often is new managers, senior leaders that trickle down to teams, and even executives. The work I've done has varied. Now, often the way in which I am serving through Be Confident and Kind is through speaking in workshops. I go into large, complex organizations, many organizations that are siloed and layered, and offer a workshop first. And then from that workshop, there's spin-off lines of business or add-on ways in which we can work together, which typically is either in a consultative capacity with teams or one-on-one coaching with the leaders who want it.
It's inspiring that you have used your purpose as a leader and what you've learned in leadership and created a company that adds value in that capacity and that serves in that capacity. And I can hear the passion, I can hear the authenticity. And you don't just do coaching, trainings, and workshops, you're also taking this knowledge and writing a book. Do you want to tell us more about that?
My book is called The Charisma Craft. The reason it's called The Charisma Craft is because I believe the thesis we've taken is that charisma is not a personality trait. It's actually a skill, whether we want to call it a social skill, a professional skill, a soft skill. It is a skill that can be crafted to meet your authenticity, your version of boldness, and your curiosity. And it takes time, it takes practice, it takes refinement. So as long as we're working towards embodying authenticity, boldness, and curiosity, we can craft a more magnetic style of charismatic leadership.
That's super cool. I love it. I can't wait to have your book in my hands and learn how to get more Riz.
Yeah, totally.
Did I use that right?
I know we're both millennials. I don't know if you did according to Gen Z slang, because for them, Riz is as I understand it, tied to attracting a romantic partner. But therein lies like a fundamental issue, Kelly, of like, we need actual more Riz in the workplace, because Riz is playful, Riz is fun, Riz is attraction, but it's not just one way attraction of, you all should follow me as the leader. It's really, we're looking for that healthy Riz that requires two-way human connection. And so just being playful and like being willing to get it wrong showcases like Kelly's the type of leader that I want to sit down and have lunch with, and not like the type of leader I fear having to knock, visit her closed door office on my lunch break. Like it's Riz is really, I think, a posture of playfulness and openness.
Let's talk about building a successful career and what it takes to get there. What do you think is the biggest challenge that workplaces face today?
Yes, the biggest challenge that I find in the workplaces I'm going into is disconnectivity. Disconnectivity stems from a lack of mindful leadership. And let me just extend an olive branch to every executive out there. It is hard, and to any leader, it is hard being a leader. It is hard leading people. It's not supposed to be easy. It's challenging. It's difficult. And decisions have to be made, and that leaders sometimes have to fall on the sword for. And so I find that a lot of leaders are quick to like rubber stamp or green light and say yes to connectivity tools. Like, this is going to be great. Kelly and Milam are going to be able to chat all day on Slack. When really in reality, if they came to us, workers on the front lines, and we're like, I am so over these Slack pings. And this isn't like to point the finger at Slack. I know it serves some workplaces, others it doesn't. But it's like, it's giving me anxiety getting all these pings, or actually things are falling through the cracks, because instead of slacking me, I want you to walk over to my desk, or I want us to have one standing day in the office per week where we can talk about this face to face and get on the same page. So by no means am I on here trying to argue for a return to office, or like take a firm line in the sand of like remote's better than in office. None of that. Like I genuinely think it varies organization to organization. What the point I'm trying to make is that any organization should be investing in human connection over connectivity tools. And so when we can become mindful of what we're investing in and why, that's when organizations really start to hum and build momentum and become mindful of who it is they serve and why they serve them.
Yeah, I think we all learned in the pandemic that human connection is like just a fundamental need. And it's so hard to truly connect with another person just through a virtual medium. There are so many nuances in how you communicate, body language, also just seeing someone's face, even their desk, their office. Like who's that, picture of? Um, it's so important. How do you solve that for organizations?
Before I answer that, I want to just highlight what you said of like, yes, human connection is so critical or so important. And what studies are showing today, we hear burnout all the time. Burnout's a symptom of disconnectivity. If you feel disconnected from your manager, from your leader, I don't like the word boss, or if you feel disconnected from the organization at large, you will burn out, because burnout is actually a symptom of not belonging. We think burnout's a symptom of overwork, like, oh, my manager doesn't care about me, like leadership's so out of touch with what we're doing, like they're just working us to the bone. It's actually an underlying feeling of, I don't feel aligned with this organization's culture. I don't feel aligned with this organization's mission. I don't understand our values and how I plug into them. That's where quiet quitting happens. So in order to fix this disconnectivity crisis, and as a result, the symptom of feeling burned out, is to invest in human connection. This could be having a holistic overall well-being program. And I don't mean like check the box once a year. I mean an ongoing program where we are investing in our employees' mental, physical, and emotional health. I think the most critical thing for employees in the future of work, it's not your titles. Trust me, I chased them. When I was on that ladder, I thought like, I can't wait till I become a VP because I'm going to be legit. That's bullshit. I want to tell my younger self, you being a vice president, Milam, doesn't mean shit. Literally.
Yeah.
What you should be searching for and working to deepen your learning in is skills. The future of work is skills. If we can reskill leaders to think about the future of work differently and how they serve others, or upskill them in the way in which they're serving, then we're really going to solidify a strong future of work.
So what would you say makes for a fulfilling career?
I love this question because as a coach, my favorite modality of coaching I offer my leaders is fulfillment coaching. Fulfillment is such an interesting, I find, double-edged sword for so many, because we think once we reach that title, or we think once we have the house, or we think once we drive the fancy car that we may not even be driving to the office, that will be fulfilled. None of those things matter. So I find that fulfillment actually comes from within. Fulfillment can come from so many different sources, and fulfillment can change. What will bring you, the listener, more fulfillment is making sure that you're at an organization where you feel a sense of belonging, or you feel a sense of purpose to their vision, their mission. What will bring you fulfillment is if you can just align on one value, and knowing that value, if you're advancing it every day, it matters. It matters. Look within and figure out what fulfills you. And if you're not getting it in your career now, that doesn't mean you won't ever get it. It doesn't mean you need to make a drastic change, a 180 change. Just see if there can be little 1-degree shifts of working towards that value or working towards that project. And you'll know over time if you're trending in the right direction or not. And then you can make a change.
I love what you said about knowing your values, because I have this framework. It's about knowing what season of your career are you in. Is it slow, sow, or grow? So let me explain. Slow is when, those seasons of life when you need to slow down. Maybe you have to take care of your family, take care of a loved one, and you just can't take on more responsibility in your workplace or in your job and balance everything out. So that's slow. Sow is when you're starting to plant seeds in the ground for the future. Maybe you're going to a training, maybe you're upskilling, or you're taking a course to gain some sort of credential, and you're going to reap that benefit in the future. And then grow is when you're in a leadership position and you're looking to manage and develop other people. It's how do you grow your skill set as a leader and gain more transferable skills so that, at some point in time, maybe if you don't want to be doing this anymore, you can transfer those over to the next career path that you're on. It starts with values. It starts with knowing what's important to you now, right?
That's it. I love that. We can't do it all at once. And sometimes those seasons of slow, or as you and I both know as parents, like it's you've got to honor that. You've got to honor that. And so I love these three filters you've been able to offer listeners of assessing where they are in their own journey.
Yeah. So Milam, you've had an amazing career run. And looking back, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
I would tell my younger self, simply trust yourself. Just trust that it will all work out. If you're paying attention to the things you're doing, if you're living with intention, and if you have unwavering self-belief, then you're going to figure it out. And just trust that things are happening for you, not to you.
And if you had to sum up your career in 3 words, what would those be?
Well, I'm going to start with not over. I feel like I'm just getting started. So that summary would go as this. Number 1, a work in progress. I'm still figuring it out like we all are. Number 2, it's been really exciting. And number 3, it's been challenging. And I think it's important to honor the struggle and keep going. So work in progress, exciting and challenging. And a reminder to myself and others, you got this, trust yourself, keep going.
Yes, you absolutely got this, Milam. Seeing your career, listening to your career progression, it has been such an honor to have you on this podcast. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
You're welcome. Let's slay the fear and be confident and kind.
Yes, let's do it.
The Career Slay podcast is a co-production of Career Slay and Weld Reply. This episode was produced by Asia Lane and Michael Burke, with editing by Michael Burke. If you like the show, subscribe and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you're ready to level up, pivot, or lead with confidence, book a coaching discovery call with me at careerslay.com.